Come on, just a little one.
No.
Yeah.
Imagine it's a warm summer night. You're walking alone, the city streets quiet around you. Your phone buzzes. It's a message from someone you thought was a friend. "Meet me at the usual spot," it says. You hesitate, but you go. What you don't know is that this decision will change everything. This is the story of Laura Babcock, who vanished without a trace in July 2012. Her family and friends searched desperately, but she was gone. No body, no clues, just silence. For years, her fate remained a mystery. But now, the truth is coming to light, and it's more horrifying than anyone imagined. There's one piece of evidence, one overlooked detail in her final communications, that changes everything. Stay with us to the end, and you'll see what everyone else missed. It was a warm summer evening in June 2012 when Laura Babcock stepped out of her Toronto home. She had recently graduated from the University of Toronto with a degree in English and drama, her eyes set on a future as an actress. She hugged her parents, Clayton and Linda, and scratched her dog Lacey behind the ears, promising a quick return. The door clicked shut behind her, a sound so ordinary it barely registered. Laura had been in touch with Dylan Millard, a friend from years past. They'd dated briefly, but now they were just friends, or so it seemed. On July 3, 2012, she dialed his number for the last time, a short call that ended abruptly. Then, her phone went dark, its silence stretching into days. The evening air was still as Laura walked her usual route, her footsteps echoing faintly on the pavement. To anyone watching, she was just another young woman heading somewhere familiar. But there was a tension in her stride, a subtle hurry her family later recalled. They grew anxious as hours turned to days. Her phone, once buzzing with life, was dead. They reported her missing, but the police found little to grasp. No witnesses, no trace. Laura had been grappling with mental health struggles, diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and had briefly worked as an escort. Yet, her optimism shone through, a spark her loved ones clung to as the search faltered. Her connection to Millard was more tangled than it appeared. Phone records later revealed over 100 contacts between them in the days before she vanished. Texts, calls, a thread of communication that tightened as July began. He was a familiar figure, a wealthy acquaintance with a charming smile. But something shifted that summer. Witnesses glimpsed her with Millard and another man, Mark Smick, their presence lingering like shadows in the heat. But here's what police didn't release at the time. Laura's final 8 calls were all to Millard. 8 desperate attempts to reach him, unanswered questions trapped in those fleeting minutes. This detail, buried in the records, would later ignite the case, a spark overlooked in the early haze of confusion. The investigation crawled forward, stymied by dead ends. Laura's family pleaded for answers, but the trail stayed cold. Then, in 2013, Millard and Smick were arrested for another murder, Tim Bosma's. Suddenly, Laura's case cracked open. Witnesses placed her with the pair days before she disappeared. An incinerator, purchased by Millard just before July, loomed large in the evidence. Her body was never found, the mystery stubbornly unsolved for years. It felt like the end of the story, a tragic fade to black. And that's everything we know. Or so we thought. Just as the case seemed to settle into silence, a chilling breakthrough tied Millard and Smish to Laura's fate, flipping the narrative on its head and proving the vanishing was only the beginning. The official investigation into Laura Babcock's disappearance began with a simple explanation. Toronto police labeled it a missing person case, suggesting the 23-year-old had walked away from her life. Laura had been grappling with mental health struggles, working as an escort, and living a transient lifestyle, so the theory made sense to them. Her parents, Clayton and Linda, pleaded for more urgency, insisting Laura wouldn't just vanish without a trace. But with no body, no crime scene, and no obvious signs of foul play, law enforcement's hands were tied. The official stance was clear. Laura had likely chosen to disappear, perhaps seeking a fresh start elsewhere. Case closed, or so they thought. That narrative held until May 2013, when a separate crime blew the lid off everything. Dellen Millard, a wealthy aviation heir already connected to Laura via phone records, was arrested for the murder of Tim Bosma, a man who vanished during a truck test drive. Suddenly, Laura's cold case caught fire. Investigators revisited her disappearance, uncovering a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to Millard and his friend, Mark Smitch. Phone logs revealed over 100 contacts between Laura and Millard in June and July 2012. Friends confirmed she'd been with the pair days before she went silent. Then came the incinerator, a massive machine Millard bought and dubbed the Eliminator, delivered just before Laura vanished. The official story started to wobble, and just when we thought we had answers, something strange happened. While probing Bosma's murder, police stumbled on letters between Millard and Smick. One line stood out: "The BBQ is ready for meat." Innocent on its own, but paired with that incinerator purchase, it painted a chilling picture. Was this a coded hint about Laura's fate? The cracks in the police's initial theory widened. Digging deeper, investigators found more holes. Millard and Smick insisted they hadn't seen Laura in months, yet her phone pinged near Millard's home on July 3, 2012. Her final 8 calls, all unanswered, went to Millard's number. If they weren't in touch, why was she reaching out so frantically? And why did Millard's phone place him at a secluded farm soon after? Evidence piled up, reframing the official narrative from a voluntary exit to something far darker. Crazy how much we've uncovered in just the first few minutes. The real gut punch came from Millard himself. In a text to Smetch, he wrote, "I'm going to need your help with something. It's time to take care of a problem." Detectives believed that problem was Laura. Caught in a volatile love triangle with Millard and his girlfriend, Christina Nudga, she'd become a liability. Jealousy and rage simmered, and Laura, vibrant and unaware, stepped into the crosshairs. But the story twists again. During the 2014 Bosma trial, a witness dropped a bombshell.
The trial into Tim's death is in the hands of a jury. 12 men and women are sifting through 16 weeks of evidence, and while we know who stands accused, there is still no clear answer why, and there may never be. Dellen Millard and Mark Smitch.
Millard had bragged about killing Laura and torching her remains in the incinerator. The room froze. The official line, "No body, no crime," crumbled under the weight of his own words. Then came the forensic hit. Experts tested the incinerator and found traces of human DNA, degraded but consistent with Laura's profile. Motive, means, and a grim remnant converged. Millard and Smick faced first-degree murder charges for Laura's death, on top of their Bosma convictions. The prosecution argued premeditation. Laura was lured, killed, and erased to tie up loose ends. Still, doubts lingered. The defense pounced on the lack of a body, calling the DNA inconclusive. Could Laura be alive somewhere, they asked, but the jury didn't buy it. In 2018, after a tense trial, Millard and Smish were convicted of murdering Laura Babcock. The official narrative lay in ruins, replaced by a brutal reality. 2 men had snuffed out her life and burned away the evidence.
Laura Babcock disappeared. 2 friends have been found guilty in her death. There's Dellen Millard and Mark Smitch.
Even with justice served, shadows remain. What went down in Laura's final moments? Why did it take years to connect the dots? The investigation unraveled a nightmare, but some truths may stay buried forever, lost in the ashes of the Eliminator. The official story paints a grim picture. Laura Babcock, caught in a love triangle, became a liability to Dellen Millard and Mark Smish, who lured her, killed her, and incinerated her remains to erase the evidence. But what if the truth is even darker? What if the love triangle wasn't just a motive, but a cover for something more sinister? Christina Nudga, Millard's girlfriend, was jealous of Laura, that much is clear. Texts between her and Millard seethed with rage over Laura's presence in his life. But was Nudga merely a pawn in Millard's game, or did she play a more active role? Some speculate she knew about the plan, perhaps even encouraged it. After all, she stayed with Millard through the investigation, loyal to a fault. What if she wasn't just complicit, but involved? Then there's the incinerator, the eliminator, purchased just before Laura vanished. The prosecution argued it was the murder weapon's final act, used to destroy her body. But what if it was a red herring? Millard was a man of means, with access to secluded properties and resources. Why buy such a conspicuous machine if discretion was key? Perhaps the incinerator was meant for another purpose, tied to Millard's shady dealings. What if Laura stumbled upon something she wasn't supposed to see, a secret project, a criminal enterprise, and became a target not out of jealousy, but necessity? This theory casts her disappearance in a new light. Not a crime of passion, but a calculated silencing. And what about the possibility of more players in this deadly game? Millard and Smish were convicted, but were they the only ones involved? Rumors swirl of a third accomplice, someone who helped cover tracks or provided an alibi. A shadowy figure glimpsed in the background of surveillance footage, never identified. Could there be a conspiracy at play, with Laura's death just one piece of a larger puzzle? But then, we found something even stranger. A detail buried in the trial transcripts, overlooked by most. In the days before her disappearance, Laura had been researching true crime stories, fixating on cases of women who vanished without a trace. She'd even joked with friends about how easy it would be to disappear. Was this mere coincidence, or did Laura sense the danger closing in? Did she leave clues, hidden in plain sight, that could rewrite the entire narrative? Her mental health struggles add another layer of complexity. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, Laura's behavior could be erratic, her decisions impulsive. Some theorize she orchestrated her own disappearance, staging it to look like foul play. But that doesn't explain the incinerator, the DNA traces, or Millard's chilling confession. Still, the question lingers. What if Laura's final act was a desperate bid for control, a way to escape a life that had spiraled out of her grasp? Or consider her work as an escort. It's a dangerous profession, one that could have exposed her to unsavory characters. What if Millard and Smitch weren't the only threats in her life? Perhaps a client, someone with a grudge, saw an opportunity in the chaos of her personal drama. This theory shifts the focus, suggesting her killers might still be out there, hiding in the shadows. These what-ifs haunt the case, each one a thread that unravels the neat conclusion. Was Laura a victim of passion, a casualty of crime, or something else entirely? The answers may never surface, but one thing is certain. The truth is rarely as simple as it seems. Laura Babcock's story doesn't end with a tearful reunion or a peaceful grave. It ends in a sterile courtroom. In 2018, Dellen Millard and Mark Smish were convicted of her murder, sentenced to life without parole. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records tying Laura to Millard, receipts for an incinerator purchased days after her disappearance, faint DNA traces, and Millard's own chilling letters boasting of the crime. The judge's gavel fell, and justice appeared to prevail. But for Laura's family, the triumph rang hollow. There was no body to mourn, no headstone to visit, just an emptiness where their vibrant daughter once stood.
Sat through a 6-week funeral for our daughter Laura, and you all know what a wonderful woman she was, as well as all the pains and struggles that she faced.
The incinerator's ashes confirmed her death, but offered no solace. Yet, even with the guilty verdicts, the story feels incomplete. Millard's defense sowed seeds of doubt, pointing to Laura's struggles with mental health and her nomadic lifestyle. They argued she could have vanished on her own. The jury dismissed it, but a nagging question persists. What if there's more? Her phone records reveal those desperate, unanswered calls to Millard in early July 2012. Then, there's the detail that freezes the blood. On July 3rd, at 11:47 p.m., Laura's phone dialed a number she'd never contacted before, a burner phone, untraceable. The call lasted 13 seconds before abruptly ending. Who answered? Was it a plea for rescue, a misdial in a panic, or a connection to someone beyond the killers? The prosecution brushed it aside, calling it a distraction. But for those haunted by the case, it's a splinter in the narrative. Could a third figure have played a role, slipping through the investigation's grasp? Or was Laura reaching out to an unknown savior in her last moments? No one knows. The truth, like her remains, stays lost. Laura's life was stolen, erased by jealousy and cruelty. Her killers are caged, but the case refuses to rest. It echoes in the grief of her loved ones, in the debates of crime aficionados, and in that final cryptic call. Justice arrived, but closure didn't follow. The fire took her body, not her story. And that 13-second mystery? It whispers that even in a tale this dark, some shadows remain unlit. Laura Babcock's story is a descent into darkness, but it's not the only one. Cases like hers, where love turns lethal and truth burns to ash, haunt our archives. What if I told you there's another? A woman vanished, her phone left behind with a single chilling text. "I'm not coming back." Her last call? To a number that doesn't exist. The investigation stalled, but whispers linger of a figure seen watching her home, a shadow that slipped through the cracks. The next story is already unfolding, and it's more twisted than you can imagine. If Laura's case left you unsettled, this one will crawl under your skin and stay there. Don't blink. You might miss the detail that changes everything. Subscribe to Sinister Journal and brace yourself. The truth is rarely what it seems, and sometimes it's worse.